doing it again.
Sir, our next question.
Hi. I was just at a philosophical luncheon at the University of Chicago where they teach your brand of atheism and morality in their theology school. But they were congratulating Chicago alderman on his life. And one of the things that they cheered was that he had spent several months with Trotsky in Mexico in 1928. They thought this was really great. And that a group of atheists would cheer a man who killed between 40 and 60 million people, and having spent, I would now do it, having spent months with him, and this is something they look up to. And this is the top of the people who do this. The Chinese, who were atheists, killed, what, 100 to 200 million people? They did 90 million people in one, locking up 2 provinces in the north, and they preached atheism. And Trotsky went and preached atheism across Russia, and then he hung priests from the back of the train. To say that atheism will kill without any limit if it gets into power anywhere. This has been proved from one end of the world to another. After Ethiopia, right, this is your thing. Atheism will kill. There is no defense.
Sir, we need a, excuse me, sir, we need a question, please.
No, he's got made a perfectly good question.
How can you defend atheism? I mean, you know, how can there be, you say that atheism won't kill? I mean, if you bring atheism back in a government, it will kill as many people.
No, the question, by the way, I thought it was a perfectly well-phrased question. To be an atheist doesn't guarantee you against being a sadist or a nihilist or a fascist or a Stalinist or a Maoist, though it's slightly unlikely I think you'd be a fascist or a National Socialist, but it's I would say, a necessary condition for enlightenment, not a sufficient one. And I'll take your question seriously in the following way. The 20th century totalitarianisms that are accused of being secular, I'll say something about each of them. It was a long question, so I hope you'll allow me. I'll try and condense it. To start with the original 20th century totalitarian ideology, which originally called itself fascism. If in any account you read of fascism, historical account you read, from its origins in Italy, through Spain, Portugal, Croatia, Hungary, Slovakia, etc. If you take out the word fascist and put Catholic right wing, it's the same story. There's no difference. And if you add parties in political alliance with the Vatican, it's the same. All of them. Fascism is another word for the Christian Catholic right wing. In Slovakia, the actual head of the fascist dictatorship was a priest, Father Tiso. In almost every case, the regime was in holy orders and or with the direct alliance with the Pope himself. That's a simple matter. Anyone can check it out. I'm not going to assert it now. I would just say fact-checking, and I would be as one on this point. Now, that's not completely true with National Socialism. It's true of the Nazi Party in Austria and Bavaria in its heartlands that it begins blessed by the Vatican, by a concordat with the Church, by the Protestant churches also. But it's not true to say it's a Christian movement in quite the same way. It's a pagan movement to some extent. My favorite example is this, I suppose. Joseph Goebbels was expelled from the Catholic Church. He was. He was the only Nazi who was. Why was he expelled? For marrying a divorced Protestant. Magda Goebbels. You see, the Church does have its standards. However, it is estimated by Paul Johnson, Catholic historian, that more than 40% of the Waffen-SS were practicing, confessing Catholics. No one was ever excommunicated or threatened with excommunication for taking part in the final solution. And that was because of the alliance between the Nazi Party and the Church on two main things, anti-Bolshevism and anti-Semitism. Again, I'm condensing a bit. Now, it brings me to the Stalinists. Okay, you're Joseph Stalin. You've taken over Russia. You've been educated in a seminary in Georgia, by the way. Up till 1917, for hundreds of years, hundreds of millions of Russians have been told that the head of the state is a god. That the Tsar is above power, ordinary secular power, that he's the head of the Russian Orthodox Church as well as the... You shouldn't be in the dictatorship business if you can't take advantage of a deep well of credulity and servility like that. It's your golden opportunity. What does he do? Heresy trials. Heresy trials, witch hunts, miraculous discoveries such as Lysenko's biology, the worship of the leader from whom all blessings flow. As I described North Korea, the most religious state I've ever seen. Mutatis mutandis, this would apply also to Mao's China, with the same background of superstition and servility. Now, for there to be a fair test about this, you'd have to do the following. And no one I've ever debated with has even tried it. So you be the first. You find me a state or a society that threw off theocracy and threw off religion and said we adopt the teachings of Lucretius and Democritus and Galileo and Spinoza and Darwin and Russell and Jefferson and Thomas Paine. And we make those what we teach our children. We make that scientific and rational humanism our teaching. And you find me that state that did that and fell into tyranny and slavery and famine and torture, and then we'll be on a level playing field. As it is, all you've done is show that the idea of worship and the idea of credulity and the idea of servility and slavery to religion is a bad idea in the first place.
But none of the czars and none of the Chinese kings, none of this.
By the way, the Russian Orthodox Church always stayed with Stalin, always stayed with Stalin.
But they never killed 30% of their population.
Who didn't?
The Russians never killed 30% of the population before the communists took over, 20 or 30%. No czar ever did that. No Christian czar ever did any killing on anyone.
Well, no, excuse me, they started the First World War. They started the pogroms. They brought the protocols of the Elders of Zion that was imported by Tsarist secret policemen to National Socialist Christian gangsters in Europe. How much do you think the export of Russian Orthodox anti-Semitism cost us in point of lives and war? And have you ever counted up what happened to the wars, in the wars that Tsarism started and carried on, and the persecutions, and the famines, and the tortures, and the starvation, and the people who just died of neglect? Come on. You want to do this accounting? I'm here. I'm really here for you. Or what the Serbian Orthodox and the Russian Orthodox have just done in the Balkans. The most recent genocide we've seen in Europe, entirely done by Russian and Serbian Orthodox fascists and Catholic Croatian Ustasha, grinding a whole part of civilized Europe into nothingness and bloodshed for their filthy, stupid medieval quarrels. How dare you say that any secularist, we who've opposed this kind of barbaric stuff, are on all fours with these creeps? You should take it back. You owe me an apology.